In today's video, we're going to be diving into the upcoming pattern, taking a look at some major storms happening around the nation, including a tropical concern where I do have a lot of good news for those of you along the Gulf Coast that are concerned about that one. We have much colder air on the way for the medium all the way into the long range than what we've been really seeing. So we're going to be seeing a big time shift in the pattern. I think that's the main preface of today's video. When we look at the jet stream here, we're seeing overall something like this, but the trend is obviously it's kind of inclined towards the east here. So it's basically climbing as you move eastward, which means warmer air underneath, colder air on the top here. So we're seeing that cold in the west, warm in the east. And when we move towards the end, we're going to see an opposite. What we're going to see towards the end is something a lot more like this, where we see the decline from west to east with the colder air over top here and the warm underneath back here. So that is the big time flip in the entire upcoming pattern that we do expect. I want to take us mostly overnight here. We do have a coastal storm offshore of North Carolina and Virginia here. So this storm is bringing some much needed rainfall to some of these areas here. 1 to 2 inches here from my neck of the woods. I'm ecstatic about it. It's been raining already this afternoon and evening, and it's a little surprising. It's like I forgot what rain's even like. I feel like it was just amazing to me, which, you know, obviously that's not normal for around here to feel that way. So it has clearly been an abnormally very dry pattern that we've been seeing. As we take a look here at Friday afternoon, tomorrow from the time I'm making this video, we do see a 994 here across Wyoming and Colorado. Some snowfall across some of the Rocky Mountain range here with cooler air just sinking down here. We do see warmer air extending to the north to the east of that low, which is very, very typical. We make sure to mention that every time because the lows, these strong lows, typically are separating the cold and the warmth here just like this. Your coastal storm is well offshore. For a lot of us, I wish that this would have tracked up the coast and brought a lot more rainfall to many different areas in here. But obviously we didn't see that end up happening, unfortunately. As we move towards Saturday afternoon on November 16th, we see a much quieter look. Our stronger low is up near the Dakotas, a little bit of a drier one with some snow showers behind it and underneath it. But that's really the gist of it. I mean, not much else happening around the nation. Again, when we take a look at where this low is, we see colder air sinking behind it to the west and warm air rising up to the east of this one, which I'm going to say it again is very, very typical. This is what we see in the springtime a lot too. If this was a springtime storm, we would likely be seeing severe weather throughout this underneath corridor where this warmer air is rising up and the cold air is kind of swinging and hitting it from the side. So the fall time is very similar to the springtime and the types of lows that we see. It's very interesting, you know, polar opposites of the year, but we do see similar types of lows. Now, as we just keep on going towards Sunday afternoon on November 17th, what we're seeing is rainfall and snowfall now kind of taking over for the Northwest. Our low is over Montana, so Cascades, Northern Rockies seeing some snowfall, and then a lot of the Pacific Northwest coast is seeing rainfall there. We do also have another very interesting, pretty strong low here. We have 3 pretty equal lows here, Montana, Mexico, and then here over Canada. I guess 1 for each nation here. You know, kind of everybody has their fair share, but we have this one over the Northwest that we just touched on, some rainfall and even Rocky Mountain snowfall. The Rockies do extend down into Mexico. We're seeing some of that mountainous snowfall as far south as Mexico here. And then we have this one that's pretty much equal strength up here in Canada. And this has a little bit of a dry cold front. We're not seeing precipitation along it, but we can tell that there is a dip happening here to the west and south of this low. So likely there is some sort of frontal boundary influencing this pattern. As we keep on keeping on towards Monday on November 18th here, we do see a 985 millibar low pressure center over Kansas, and this is when severe weather is very possible. We see a warm front setting up here to the north, cold front kind of extending southward right here, and what we're seeing is potential for severe weather in this corridor. Again, it's just what I mentioned. We have the cold air kind of swinging underneath things. Let me try to draw this better. Low there, cold swinging underneath things here. Warm air surging northward right here. And it's everywhere in between right here that would be seeing the potential severe weather between this northerly flow and that easterly flow kind of slamming into each other That creates a lot of instability alongside those warm and cold air masses interacting. That is a bad look. So showers to the north likely in these corridors here, very heavy showers and even just steady rainfall, and then thunderstorms and severe weather here in this cold front corridor would be likely. Snowfall is really, really prevalent for this day on for the Cascades, the Rockies here. A lot of folks dealing with some snowfall. Tuesday here on November 19th, we see this rises up to the Midwest, and this is kind of what's leading towards the cool down that we've been anticipating. What we see by this point is, again, another kind of dry looking cold front here, a warm front that has a little bit of precipitation along it. So we see the warm air rising up here for kind of the Ohio Valley, mid-Atlantic areas here. And then we see this cold is kind of aiming eastward. It's not heading straight south over the west. And matter of fact, we actually have some warm pushing back from the south here in the west. And this is causing this cold to have to slide over this very warm area here. And that's what's kind of aiming it all eastward. This cold front is just pulling it along with it, basically, is what you can imagine. So when we're going to see this low kind of move up into here, that cold front every step of the way is going to be tracking further and further eastward over time, bringing that cold air towards the east. So let's just take a look at Wednesday. And again, our low is now over Wisconsin. Cold front is extended out just like this, and we see this cold air just tracking straight into the eastern states, with warm air really flourishing here over the west for the most part, which is going to continue to bring the cold air towards the east. Snowfall for the northern plains and upper Midwest is a big possibility here as well, alongside some weaker secondary lows around for the kind of mid-Atlantic and southeast here. Could bring even more rainfall. This is actually a tropical system, by the way, which again, we have some good news. We will touch on this one in a little bit. Let's take this a step further towards Thursday, and this is just a classic ridge in the west, trough in the east pattern here that we're seeing, where this cold air is funneling into this eastern area, and this is going to bring much colder temperatures than what we're seeing now. We actually see a little bit of warm air able to make its way up into New England as we have a low just to the southwest of those areas. And then overall, obviously, very warm and mild temperatures in nature out west for the most part there. Now, by Friday, this is when it's the most centered over the east, I would say. If we were to look at the axis of it, it's something like this. With warm air spreading for a wider area here in the west, even extending into a bit of the central states, although, you know, a lot of these areas, the wind's almost heading directly southward along that jet stream, so it's probably cooler in here than it looks. But overall, just a super, super interesting pattern. Some snow and rain showers mixed for these areas within that trough, so that's how cold we're going to be. The daytime temperatures can support snowfall in some of these areas. And by the time we see Saturday, we see a flattening out jet stream with a little bit of a trough in the west, but we still see this kind of milder but still around trough in the east, so a little bit of a descending pattern in the east there, with overall some colder temperatures able to influence the northwest here. Stronger low over British Columbia. This is bringing snowfall to the Sierra Nevada and Cascade mountain ranges. Very interesting, but what we're going to see is actually more troughs are going to head into the east, believe it or not. We're not warming up on this model. Matter of fact, we're going to cool right back down here Sunday. Very quiet. Don't even, you know, there's not a lot to mention. There's a 999 over South Dakota here. This could be what ends up dragging the cold air in again. And sure enough, that kind of is what it looks like here to me. We see this low weakens as it heads up into the Midwest here, but it looks like it has a little bit of a dry cold front there, a little bit of a warm front out here to the east, and this is just going to drag that cold air back into the eastern states. Meanwhile, we have continued snowfall for the northern Rockies and Cascades, so that could be something that continues to occur. So we'll have to watch for that, of course. Now, as we keep on going, I want to take us towards Tuesday. We see this low is now kind of a nor'easter here. We see some mountainous snowfall in the northeast, some rainfall in other areas. But look at how far south that jet stream is. We're seeing a much colder pattern, and I want to argue that that first cool down that we're seeing in just a little bit, the jet stream on average is like up here right now. It drags it hundreds of miles further southward, and I think it's just going to bring on, you know, the more winter-like pattern that we're going to see stick around overall for the most part through the winter. It seems like we're taking a big leap in that direction after that cool down is done, to where we're, you know, we're moving from a I would say unseasonably warm pattern that feels a lot more like October, that just shoots us, it ricochets us right into a late November, early December pattern, really in a hurry. that is kind of my consensus here on what I'm thinking. And here's that descending pattern. So again, purely the opposite of what we've been seeing. We see the descending pattern into the east. Again, instead of the opposite, with warmer temperatures here to the south over the west and colder temperatures here to the east and north of this jet stream. So definitely a huge flip. Again, this is what we're seeing now. This is what we're seeing in the beginning of the pattern. Look at the difference with where we end up. Purely the opposite there. Now, as we keep going, Thursday here, we see some storms out west. Another look at a potential snowstorm in the mid-Atlantic here. So some snowfall over these areas, colder air as well. We kind of just continue on with that descending pattern into the east straight through the end of this model run. Keep in mind, this is around 15 days out with this mid-Atlantic snowstorm, and this is a little bit unseasonable to say the least for a lot of these areas in this kind of like southern mid-Atlantic area. So take it with a grain of salt. Seriously, I don't think this is going to occur this way, but it is interesting to see that this model is showing support for some interesting storms like that. Let's go ahead and move on to the total precipitation. We see really, really good amounts here for a lot of the west. We see decent amounts here for the plains into the Midwest and Great Lakes. And then the same story here for the Mid-Atlantic into the Northeast. Nothing crazy, and it might not even be above average for most of these areas, but it's a lot closer to average, and at least it's some precipitation for these areas that have seen basically none. So overall, good news. Here is the precipitation anomalies. Again, above average here for the plains, as they usually see a little less. Same story for the Northwest and down through this actual California area as well, above average. And then a little bit for the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, but really these areas in general are a lot closer to average than they have been. The main dry area is this deep south area, and they've been dry for a long, long time. So yeah, just kind of dealing with this continued dryness there along the Gulf Coast and up in through like the Mississippi River area. I'll continue to monitor that and pay attention. Total snowfall, we see a ton for the Cascades, Sierra Nevada, also down here through the Rockies. We're seeing inches. I would say we're dealing with below average snowfall for most of these areas, where we've seen a far above average amount, so it's okay. But these northern areas, it's near normal to slightly below normal. And then for these areas in the Cascades and Sierra Nevada, far above average snowfall. The Midwest down through portions of the Mid-Atlantic and Great Lakes and Northeast could see some snowfall on the way. Obviously nothing crazy here, but flakes to potentially a few inches, certainly possible for some spots depending on what happens with this pattern. Here's the temperature pattern. Again, we have some colder air around with the precipitation. We do warm back up briefly for the beginning of next week. Here's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But here comes that massive cool down. Here's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday here. Saturday, Sunday, we warm back up, but look, we get another cool down here in the east starting Tuesday into Wednesday, the 26th, 27th. Here's Thursday, Friday, and we continue to look cold here in this eastern corridor for multiple days in a row, with warmer temperatures really prevailing here for much of these western areas. Now, your spaghetti model guidance for a current tropical cyclone, it's really close to Central America here. It's trended further and further south. It's going to go over the Yucatan Peninsula and then enter open waters over the Gulf. It is expected to head towards Florida, but I think all of this land interaction here is really going to hold back development in a storm that could have been a hurricane or maybe even approaching major hurricane if it would have gone over open water here through Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula. This would have been way worse, but now we're seeing a much better solution here, much more to the southwest. So good news there. I think this is all going to bode well overall. We'll continue to track this storm, among other things, so be sure to subscribe. We do upload every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.